Hi, my name is Maggie, and I am a compulsive overeater. And I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the gray sheet, from the Cambridge gray sheet. I turn those meals over to my sponsor. I don't eat between my meals no matter what. And a day at a time, I put my program and my abstinence first. And I am abstinent and committed since July 27th, 1990. And I can't it seems to me sort of amazing to, I can't believe that it's 30 years. And forgive me, I'm very nervous, so I've made notes. So if I look down, that's what I'm doing. I'm looking down and trying to figure out where the hell I am and whatever it is I'm trying to say. So this is just a day at a time program, and all I have is for today. And I'm just like you. It's just that I'm old now, and I have a lot of no matter what's to give me the blueprint about what to do when the going gets tough. And I've done my history. I've done my eat-a-log a couple of times here in the last week and a half. So I thought that there would be some other things that I could speak to that might be important or helpful. And one of them is how to be abstinent as an outpost, because I have been basically an outpost for 27 years. And how to be abstinent through service, which for me is sponsorship. That is my particular form of service. And the other thing is how to be abstinent when living with long-term mental illness. In my case, severe depression and bipolar. And it's taken me a long time to work up the nerve and the courage to talk about that, but I think it's important for a lot of people, because none of us get here with, a sterling record of mental health. So first of all, as an outpost, I did have the benefit of starting out at Jan Hus in the New York community at the Upper East Side. And it was a beautiful community to start with. It was for 3 wonderful years. I had many, many face-to-face meetings every day. I had lunches in park. We had dinners around the corner at our Chinese restaurant. It was basically gray sheet nirvana. And so when I moved out of New York City at year 3, it was a huge shock. I moved out to start my teaching career, which is a career that I had only as a result of abstinence and the gray sheet. And but I moved out and went to Michigan first to take my first sabbatical replacement job as a theater professor and movement and Shakespeare teacher. So when I moved out, I started teaching, but I ended up teaching at 6 universities. So I moved through approximately 7 cities, 7 communities in 7 years. And so I had that every year I started over again with a new community. And of course there was not gray sheet Gray sheet was not in Michigan. Gray sheet was not in Ohio. Gray sheet was maybe a little bit in Florida. I had a little bit of a few gray sheet people in Florida. And then Cornell University, there was nobody in upstate New York. And finally, I went to Oregon, where I had a very small community. I had the gift of a very small community for a lot of years there. And now I am in Phoenix, where I am once again alone. But for a while, I did try to go to OA and HOA meetings. That's regular OA and HOA HOA meetings. And I don't really advocate that anymore because for one thing, regular OA advocates, and please don't, I don't mean to disparage regular OA or HOA HOW. It's just that this is my experience of it, and my experience going into these meetings was that the regular meetings had no food plan except whatever you thought your food plan should be. And I was pretty crazy, so my food plan was a pretty crazy food plan, and that was not a good idea. And the other program advocated exceptions, which is difficult because I could make anything an exception. So so one of the food plans that I decided was a good food plan for me was eating 2 meals a day and drinking alcohol. It just didn't occur to me that frankly, it didn't occur to me that alcohol was not part of a 12-step program. To me, my problem was food, and that was it. And if given the choice between a round sugar thing and a glass of something, I would pick the round thing so it just didn't compute. And it was years before I finally, in the middle of the sidewalk in Brooklyn, New York, had the realization, oh my God, I am an alcoholic too. And that was before I found Gray Sheet, but it literally did not occur to me at that point. And another thing about regular OA and HOA HOW is that there was no regular OA, there was no real abstinence requirement to lead a meeting. You could basically lead a meeting if you had binged on the way there. And I also had a very difficult time in that there was no real physical recovery that I could see. And by the time I walked into Jan Hus, I had just turned 35, and I had hit somewhere over 210 for the 80th time. I went up and down 25 to 75 pounds every year, year in and out for 20 years. And I had determined, and this is going to sound very dramatic, but I had hit 35 and I had determined that there wasn't going to be another birthday if I had to keep going the way I was going, because I would rather kill myself than live in the body that I was in. I wanted to rip my skin off. I could not abide the body that I was in. And it was agony. And I couldn't stand looking in the mirror. I couldn't stand living at that weight. And I just kept returning to the high numbers, higher and higher, over and over again. What finally worked for me as an outpost after I got abstinent in New York City was the AA program. And when I need a meeting with skin on, when I need a face-to-face meeting, what I did throughout my bouncing around the different cities and states that I went through was I went to regular AA meetings. And then, of course, now God knows when we'll have another regular face-to-face meeting, but goodness, look at these Zoom meetings. They are a gift. I cannot even believe what a gift they are. So the reason I am comfortable at AA meetings is because I identify as an alcoholic, but I would suggest if you truly don't identify as an alcoholic, what I would suggest is that you find a good women's meeting anyway. And because after all, the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking, and we certainly have that. And you can identify as an addict because we certainly are that. So that way you can keep it honest and get the benefit of hearing real, true sobriety. Sobriety is what you hear in the AA rooms. And that's what you hear in our rooms, okay? Because there's a reason that Gray Sheet is so intimately connected with AA, and it's why we use the big book, why we model ourselves after Gray AA so entirely. And it is the concepts of complete abstinence no matter what, and going to any length to stay sober, to stay abstinent. AA advocates putting the plug in the jug no matter what, and going to any lengths And our scales and our abstinent foods and our rules are the myriad smaller plugs in the jug. We are AA for food. We are
That's
sober
10.
for food. Sorry?
That's 10.
10? Thank you. I drank to blackout and I ate to blackout. And to me, in an AA meeting, when I talk about not picking up, it is both the alcohol and the food combined. They're intertwined. There is no difference to me. Our food plan is based on a diabetic-like food plan that was created by a nurse and a doctor, and it limits sugars and grains, which is what alcohol is. And I happen to drink my food and chew my booze. Either way, it worked for me. And another thing about AA is that there are the steps 1, 2, and 3. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol and food, that our lives had become unmanageable. And we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. So when we put our food on a scale, we take those 3 steps immediately. Putting the food on a scale is taking those 3 steps. The ritual of putting my food on a scale is the closest thing that I have to a spiritual practice, and it brings me peace of mind and peace around the food. That's the thing, is I have peace around the food as well as peace around my body, and the knowledge that I am sober from food just as I am sober from alcohol. Sober and abstinent from food, sober and abstinent from alcohol. And another foundational aspect of Gray Sheet is the idea of service. Now, in New York City, I did a great deal of service. I led meetings, I secretaried, I chaired. But once I moved out of New York City, I'm an isolation queen, and there was not the opportunities for service that there are now through the GrayNet and Zoom. So the biggest, my greatest service has probably been sponsoring, and sponsoring a few wonderful people into time. And don't get me wrong, it's not that I am a great sponsor, I am not. But what I do think I do right is I get out of the way and I provide a conduit between the person and their higher power. And I've been blessed with a few people that had hit their bottom and found desperation, and they were just ready to hear abstinence. And all I had to do was speak abstinent to them and stay abstinent myself. So I just want to say, I want to put a pitch in for sponsoring. Sponsoring, do it. As a sponsor, you really can't excuse me, fuck this up. As long as you're just there and you stay abstinent yourself, because there is nothing that you can say or do that will keep a person from getting abstinent if they want to be abstinent. And there is nothing that you can do to keep a person abstinent if they're going to go out. And once again, it comes back to AA and the idea that people, once you get a little sobriety under your belt, you go out and you work with other people. That's what the big book recommends. And, you know, in order to keep it, we have to give it away. And I don't hear that around the Gray Sheet rooms all that much. But it is, after 6 months, my sponsor told me to get my butt out there and sponsor, even though I was terrified and I certainly didn't want to do it. And I sponsored a lot of people in New York. I sponsored a lot of people in New York. And over the years, I've also sponsored a lot of people. Now, most people don't stick. It is not a program for people who need it. It's a program for people who want it. And don't get me wrong, it's a hell of a lot of work and a hell of a time commitment to sponsor somebody. So once again, I put in a pitch for sponsoring you, you know, particularly if you're bright and shiny and new and your abstinence is, you know, in those first years, because I'm old and crotchety and impatient now and I'm tired. So please get those 90 days and go out and sponsor, because one of the things that we are trying to do is to put our message out and make sure that people know that Gray Sheet is available for the people who need it. I also have to say I'm a really good sponsee. I've worked with my sponsor for over 20 years now, and I'm a good sponsee. I do what I'm told. I don't kick. When in doubt, I leave it out or I make a call. In the last 6 months, I had to call my sponsor in New York City and wake her up, and she was not happy with me. Five more, thanks. And she was not happy with me. So again, go to any lengths, even if it means waking somebody up. And I've always told my sponsees that it doesn't matter what time of the day or night you call, you make the call, you pick up the phone and you call. So yes, sponsoring is a true joy. It is a true joy, and you get much more out of sponsoring than your sponsee does. It's a blessing. Trust me on that. And it's also kept me absent a few times too. So being a sponsor has kept me on track because I just couldn't bear the thought of telling my sponsees, sorry, you got to go find somebody else. It just didn't work for me. So that kept me on track. And finally, even though I do not want to be labeled, and I hate the term mental illness because it's just a mental difference, and but I have suffered from depression, and in 2010, 2011, I was diagnosed as bipolar. And I thought this might be helpful because I know there are some people that deal with this and deal with the fact and reality of medication in their lives. And I work with a psychiatrist around my meds. I take my meds exactly as they are prescribed for me. I do therapy once a week, and I have for years, and I do the footwork of what needs to be done on when it comes to bipolar. I've had a lot of very dark spells. I've had some, in 2011, I did have a nervous breakdown, and I quit the career that I had loved, and I completely lost it and walked out of the building and never came back again. And I have had depression and suicidal ideation, and my abstinence has been the thing that kept me steady. It has been my rock. It has been my foundation. It has kept me out of the hospital. There was one period about 3 years ago when I thought, this is not going well. Maybe it's time. And honestly, I made a lot of phone calls, and I couldn't figure out how to stay abstinent if I went into the hospital. Couldn't figure it out, and thought to myself, that's not something that I can do. It's just not something that I can do. So
2 minutes, Mag.
Great. There we go. Thank you. It's not something that I could do, and so I stayed out and I walked through it, and once again I did the footwork, and I saw my psychiatrist, and we juggled meds and got me straightened out, and that is what I do. I go to any lengths to keep my abstinence, and that is one of them. And one of the things that has helped me come to terms with and accept everything has been that I work the steps. I just recently worked the steps again in an AWOL, and it's given me, every time you work the steps, it unpeels layers of the onion. And this was no exception, and it taught me it was kind of a quick and easy way to do the 12 steps, which I desperately needed because the 12 steps can be kind of daunting. But anyway, by focusing on I think that by focusing on AA and the similarities between Gray Sheet and AA, that has kept me really on track and committed to my abstinence. And in closing, I just need to say that 30 years is not that big a deal. It just is not that big a deal. And it is absolutely doable. It's absolutely doable. And when I came into the rooms, there weren't as many of us as there are now with, 15, 18, 19, 20, 25, 22, 30. My sponsor has 35 and her sponsor has 38. So it's completely doable. And it's doable just a day at a time. All I have is today, and all you have is today, and that's all we need. Just one day at a time. And with that, I think that I hit 20 minutes. Did I? Perfect. There we go. Thank you very much for letting me speak. I appreciate it. I am humbly grateful for it. Thank you.